Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Virtue and Virtuosity. And today we're having a bit of fun because we have two people from the British Heart Foundation, one as our main interviewee, and the other one is someone I've known for quite a long time. And I'm really excited to have introducing the podcast with me as my co host. We've got Mary O'Callaghan from the British Heart Foundation. Hi.
Hi, Stuart. Delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you as well, Mary. Now, I think that for listeners, we should say we've both known each other since before our current organizations, when we used to do a very interesting benchmarking exercise across the charity sector. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was, Mary?
Absolutely. Yes, that's bringing me back. So, in the earlier days of Charity IT Leaders, which is a great membership organization for, as it says, IT leaders across the country, there was a lot of interest in sharing information about IT costs and spend. And those days, it was much harder to get access to that. So we worked with a company called ZN to create the templates and the ways of gathering information for charities. And then we provided the reporting, comparing IT spend. And it was very interesting and a lot of work for people. And now I'm on the other side. I appreciate how much work it was for those poor people like you, Stuart, that I harassed to provide the information because it was quite tricky. But it was great fun, a great way to learn a lot about the sector and see what people were really doing.
Yeah, and I found it really useful. So I was working in a member organization called VSO at the time. We found it really helpful because we were able to see what other charities were doing. And within a charity, when you're a small IT team, there's nothing worse than thinking, is what I'm doing really unusual? Is it really weird? Are we doing it all in a strange way? And the benchmarking enabled us to look at what other charities were doing and try and work out if we were spending too much or too little on something, if we were doing something which was a bit out of the ordinary, not necessarily because we would want to change that, but because at least it told us it was a bit out of the ordinary, and we could ask ourselves, are we happy we're doing that? And so I found that benchmarking really useful. And it leads nicely into this podcast because the podcast for me is all about trying to share information across the sector and to try and enable different organizations to understand what others are doing so the entire sector can benefit from it. This is very much, I'm seeing this podcast as one tide lifts all the boats. By doing this, we'll be sharing lots of information. And so I'm hoping that as part of the interviews that we're having over the coming weeks, we'll do exactly that, which enables me now, just to give a quick plug, if anyone would like to come onto the podcast, we have quite a good selection of guests lined up, but we've always got space for more. So please do get in contact with me.
Thank you, Stuart. And I think it's really interesting to think about how we've moved on from those days of benchmarking and meeting in person, looking at spreadsheets. I mean, when we were working in those days, there was no LinkedIn, there wasn't, I think, a WhatsApp. There were so fewer ways of sharing information. And now you can do it, you can tell the stories and really bring to life people's experiences and how they're working in ways that were far more difficult back when we were doing those early benchmarks.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that, but you're right. Being in a WhatsApp group or a Teams group across charities or from LinkedIn, there's so many ways to collaborate and share information now. So, Mary, I'm really hoping you're going to stick around, and we're going to have a listen now to the interview with Rob, your colleague, and then if you can, at the end of it, I'd love to hear a little bit of feedback from your side as well, without being too critical of your good friend and colleague Rob. That'd be absolutely great, Mary.
That sounds fantastic. I can't wait to hear what Rob has to say.
So hello. So today I'm joined by Rob Way, who's the Director of Technology Strategy and Planning at the British Heart Foundation. Hi there, Rob.
Hi, Stuart. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you as well. It's great to have you on. And I've been keen to get the British Heart Foundation on this podcast for a while because I know you've been up to an awful lot of things all around AI, machine learning for quite a while. Maybe can you start off just by telling me a little bit about the British Heart Foundation for those listeners who don't know the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the BHF, or the British Heart Foundation, was founded in 1961 by a group of medical professionals that were quite concerned at the time about the increasing death rate from cardiovascular disease. In the over 60 years that we've existed, we've been focused around cardiovascular research, education and care. And in recent years, we've been able to fund over £100 million into the research around cardiovascular disease. Not only its prevention, but its areas around how we can support people from surviving heart-related problems, or whether they've had a heart attack, for example, and guiding them through. So, yeah, a fascinating organisation. We've got over 700 shops and stores that you might see on the UK high street, which is a huge operation in itself. As well as that, we are the largest online retailer on eBay from a charity perspective as well. So lots of areas of opportunity for us to leverage AI, machine learning, not only in income generation, but actually in the research that we support and fund as well.
Wow, that's amazing, Rob. And I think that BHF truly are one of the giants of the charity sector. I've worked in the sector for a while, and you get to know the big organisations that really make a difference. And I guess when you're in a technology team, I'm just going to talk technology here slightly. When you're in a technology team, it's interesting because if you're in the main bit focused on the outputs of the charity, you're really close to what the charity is doing. Whereas in the technology team, often you can be slightly more disconnected. But I'm guessing at British Heart Foundation, because it is such a prevalent charity across the UK, and because so many people know someone who's suffered from heart conditions or been helped by British Heart Foundation, it's probably you end up a lot closer to the charity than many other technology teams.
Yeah, and the way that we're structured as well probably supports that quite neatly too. So our technology team, we have portfolios that are aligned to the particular areas of the organization. So we have a retail portfolio team, we have a medical portfolio team, we have enabling services and functions as well. As well as that, our marketing, fundraising and engagement technology team too. And the individuals and the colleagues that we have that work within those teams are very much aligned to what we do, um, and the services that we provide to not only our supporters but those that benefit from the services that the BHF provide to. Technology for us, it's an enabler. It really supports a lot of our ambitions, and it comes with a really close proximity to some of the services and the outcomes that we push forward as an organisation.
Yeah, that approach of, and I'm going to call it business partnering, but it sounds like business partnering on steroids you've got, where you're really connected into the different bits of the organization that do the interesting elements. It's quite popular within the sector, and it's a really great model I've seen working well. Can you just tell me also just a little bit about yourself, what your role is and how you got into the British Heart Foundation?
Yeah, so I joined the BHF about 7 years ago now. And I originally joined within the technology function, looking at kind of delivery management of activities, moving a lot of our services to the cloud. And in the past 3 years, I moved into a role around our head of change, innovation and analysis, so a far more capability-based team that was looking at business change, looking at innovative activities that we could be doing as an organization, as well as running our analyst team as well. And then in the past 8 months, I moved into this role, which is the technology strategy and planning, and the director of that team. And our role, well, I have 4 teams that I lead, one of which is strategy, which is essentially from a technology perspective, making sure that we are making the future happen rather than it happening to us. So thinking far ahead, doing that visioning and understanding and guiding from a strategic perspective where we should be going with technology. But then I also have a few other teams that play an important role in not only the creation of those strategies, but in the way that we deliver them too. So I have a technology PMO. I also have an innovation, training and change team, and as well as that, a continuous improvement team, which is looking at the day-to-day improvements that we can make, whether it be around cost savings or just efficiencies that we can drive. And when you look at AI, and I know we're going to get into that in a second, AI really can touch, cover, and be enabled and supported by all my teams. But from a strategy perspective, and I know we're going to cover off the AI strategy today, my role has been about facilitating that, bringing people together, and beginning to understand some of the anticipated challenges when you're looking over a 1, 3, and maybe a 5-year horizon as well.
I think there'll be many tech directors and CTOs and who are listening to this, Rob, and they'll probably think they'll be green with envy when they hear all about the scale that BHF is able to operate. That you've got all the roles that can actually deliver against that. I think it's really exciting when you're in a large organization that can do that. So you touched on AI there, which is of course the topic of this podcast. So can you tell me a little bit about your approach around AI? A little bit around strategy about how have you got to where you are at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a really good, fascinating story to tell actually. So the BHF has been involved in funding artificial intelligence scientific experiments around research and around cardiovascular disease for many years actually. But I think the dawn of generative AI in 2023 really began to expose the opportunities that we would have from an internal perspective as well, not only in the research that we fund, but kind of bringing it closer to the operations and making it far more accessible for us. So if I look at kind of a timeline of activities around what we did as soon as kind of OpenAI and ChatGPT and generative AI kind of hit the scene, we started off quite small, and I think it's probably the big story to tell here is that we've started small, but we're thinking big at the same time. So we ran a couple of competitions internally just to get people familiar with the technology, and that for us was a big step, getting people to understand it, getting our technology colleagues as well as other members of the organization to understand what this could do, the power of it, and then beginning to kind of go on a bit of an education journey with generative AI, and then thinking about, okay, so how do we put this exploration into something more tangible? Well, through doing that small scale competition without any real prize other than the kudos that you've won a competition around AI, which is quite glamorous in itself. We then pulled all of the interested people, all of those that had contributed to the competition into a community. And that is a fully virtual community. I think it stands at about over 100 strong today, but at the time there was about 40 or 50 individuals across the organization. And in that community, we began to start communicating with them, sharing developments around AI. They were beginning to share back what the BHF could be doing in spaces. And naturally, we started to see some use cases for generative AI start emerging. Now, with any community, you also need some guidance and some governance around it. I think it's important, not from a charity perspective, but for any organization really, in or outside the sector, to start considering the risks and the almost the governance that needs to be placed around some of the exploration of AI as well. And with that, we began to form a working group. Now, this is a group of colleagues from across the organization, whether it be within the directorates around marketing, retail, medical, but also from an information security perspective, a policy perspective, learning and development, lots of different representatives that get together on a monthly basis to discuss anything that's coming out from AI, what our position statements are, and the policies that we have too. And these two areas, not only the community, but the working group that we have as well, towards the back end of 2023, we began to use these audiences to start looking into the future and starting to define a strategy as well. So where we are at the moment, we do have an AI strategy, which I can happily talk to. And we are now, in May 2024, we are now looking at building out that roadmap of the strategy, setting the direction. The roadmap is telling us what we need to do. And we're in a position now to really harness AI across our operations through structure and through planning as well.
I like that. Can I just rewind slightly? You talked about your communities. I didn't want to interrupt you because you're in a fantastic flow there. You talked about your communities and your working groups. Can you just in terms of the scale, the number of people involved in those communities and working groups, how many people and from whereabouts in the organization were they?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the British Heart Foundation, we've got about 1,300 paid employees, and this community is open, it's public, and it's available for any of those employees to join. And I think where we stand today, it's at around 120 to 130 active participants. All the community is is a Teams group, but what it does have is active participants that are sharing, that are posting invites to webinars. How that community has benefited us as an organization is it's given us a kind of a pool of colleagues who are interested in this topic that we can bring into kind of some of the decision making, some of the shaping of our activities. Because if they're interested, and some of them are positive around AI, they are AI optimists. Some of them are slightly more fearful, but actually we want to be close to the detail and understand what we're doing about it as well. So it gives us a really good collective pool of individuals that we can work with, we can talk to, and we can build into some of the testing, the learning that we're doing around AI as well.
So that's the Teams group, which sounds like you've got nearly 10% of the workforce involved in, which is absolutely amazing. And then is there a much tighter working group that actually tackles problems and looks into and coordinates things? And what sort of makeup have you got of that working group?
Yes. So our working group, we have around 15 colleagues that attend that working group, and it is structured. It's led by my team. And it meets on a monthly basis for about an hour and a half. And the makeup of that working group, it has we have information security representatives, we have data protection representatives, we have representatives from the major directorates that we have in the organization, learning and development colleagues, as well as technology leadership as well, which I think is really important. And the makeup of that working group, it's there to understand use cases. It's there to provide a steer on ethics and responsible usage of AI. And for us, this is very much an emerging area at the moment that we want to place some more rigor around in particular. But it's there to assess some of the value and the opportunities that we have in AI at the organization. And how that works, meeting monthly, it does give us the opportunity to keep ahead and keep with the pace of change too.
So you mentioned strategic roadmaps, and it sounds like you're reasonably well progressed. Can you tell us a little bit about the strategy and how that's working, please, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. So we ran around 4 workshops, which were quite time intensive, and had a lot of attendees into those workshops to define our AI strategy at the tail end of 2023. And we've got to a position now where that has been approved. It's been looked at by all of our senior leadership and has been approved as well. And it covers 4 main areas. The first one is around education and capability. So making sure that colleagues across the organization are aware of the power of AI, what it can do, prompt engineering, all of the kind of the things that we need everybody to build a bit of literacy around and awareness around to support some of the ambitions of the strategy. That's the first pillar. The second one is around policy and governance. So making sure that we're well equipped from a responsibility perspective, an ethical perspective, and that we're giving colleagues guidance and guide rails to be able to safely explore the power of what AI could bring to their roles. The third pillar out of the 4 is around use case management and development. So this is the innovative side of things, and underneath that, we've had some really good progress in getting ideas through from multiple areas of the organisation of where AI could have a really big impact. And underneath that pillar, we've really kind of made it important to break out AI into 2 areas. The first one for us is everyday AI, and this is kind of using your chat GPTs, your Copilot, whatever the solution might be, but in order to realize productivity benefits, whether it be recording meetings, whether it be summarizing emails. And we've spun up a number of activities underneath that as well with some really positive results. But we understood quite early on that colleagues across the organization were seeing everyday AI as the only AI. And actually what we wanted to do was to shape it the other side, which we're calling game-changing AI. And these are the activities that are kind of quite disruptive, the novel applications that could have potentially millions of pounds of savings for the organization, rather than the everyday where you're kind of wrapping AI into the way that you're working. So that has been a journey in itself, a comms journey that we've been able to share, and we're capturing use cases and testing out some early value opportunities at the moment in this space. And then the 4th pillar of the strategy is around partnership. and collaboration. We know as an organization, we are not going to be the experts in AI. There are going to be technology organizations and other organizations that can support us, whether it be the skills, the capabilities, the learning, all of these areas that we're going to need to work with. And that is another area of focus for us at the moment. We have some really good partnerships established already in a technology perspective, but how do we build more in this space? And as others are going on the journey as well, how can we connect in with organisations in the sector, and yourself, Stuart? How can we kind of build connections and learn from each other as well?
Thanks, Rob. I'm absolutely loving hearing from different organisations, their approaches, and I think some of the things you said there. I know we've got quite a few trustees who sign up to this podcast, people who are looking at organisations at that level, and I think there are some really good points you ticked off there that as a trustee I'd be very interested in thinking all around making sure that there's a strategy that people within the organisation are engaged with that strategy. I really loved your way of splitting it into everyday AI and game-changing AI. So, as again, at a trustee level, you could think about, okay, what are the things that are really going to make a difference strategically to the organization? But also just thinking about all of the elements of risk there as well, because one of the outlines I've had for this podcast is that I really want to help charities learn about AI, but I want to make sure that they don't get caught into a trap where they get completely overwhelmed by the risks and don't see the benefits. And it sounds from the way you've just described it there that you've really got a very structured approach to handling that, which I think will enable you to move forward quite rapidly.
And that absolutely was the plan for it as well. If we can build kind of a strategic framework, if we can build a roadmap around how we're going to put in place some of these guardrails before we start leveraging AI at pace and at scale, that will enable us to move quickly. It's almost like you've got to slow down to speed up to begin with. And we're starting to see some really interesting benefits from AI as well in the exploration that we're doing, and a lot of it has been trials, has been pilots at this stage rather than putting things into production. But one of them in the everyday space has been around leveraging Copilot, which I know is a big opportunity for organizations in the sector who are closely aligned with Microsoft. That's given us some really good benefits in terms of return on investment, time saving, as well as some peripheral benefits that we didn't anticipate, such as well-being. If you can catch up on all of your emails after you return from annual leave, actually the sense of feeling slightly more in control and being able to watch things that you may have missed out on and not gathered that information afterwards. That we've had some really strong benefits in using Copilot and working that forward within our teams. And the trial that we ran there was about 300 colleagues from across the organisation to see the value.
Before you go into the game changing stuff, Rob, I'm just interested. Without turning this into an advert for the Microsoft team,
Sure.
social impact team, I chat with them quite a lot, and I know some of the brilliant stuff they're doing. But can you talk a little bit about the return on investment on that? Because I know a lot of charities I've talked to, they think the functionality looks amazing, but am I actually going to be able to show that I'm getting the return? Because it's expensive, especially for some of the smaller charities. It's a lot more than I think it's £25 per user per month at the moment, I think is the price, which is quite steep for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, it is. And we took a serious view in the value measurement of this trial as well. Some of the interesting findings for us, so we broke the value into some broad categories, whether it and closely aligned it to salary banding as well. So whether it be a mid-weight employee at a certain salary band, and then a manager employee, and as well as a director. And through doing some really high level broad personas, we were able to then write value assessments afterwards, whether it be through surveys and focus groups, to see how they got on with the technology, how much time were they perceived to have saved over the course of a working day, and then look at that in terms of what's the pounds and pence number that they're saving month on month in comparison to the outlay of cost that it would be. And we had some positive results. We in certain personas, we had around an 11 times return on investment. But I think the
Wow.
big thing is looking at, if that's time saved, what is that time then being spent on? Um, and one of the findings that we did have is that certain individuals adopt this technology far quicker than others. And you can see the usage metrics around what applications are they using it. Has it spiked when you give people training in the early part of the trial, and then does it peter out? And what we noticed is the importance of change management. The adoption is driven by making some of the use of these technologies habitual, rather than you can do this every now and then, save yourself a minute here or there, but actually thinking about, I can use AI to do this and it's going to speed it up. That sort of behavior change was an important learning for us to have over the course of the last 3 months of our trial, because for some it comes naturally, and for others you really need to enforce it. You need to go through change management practices with them and engage with them, and kind of do many different show and tell examples with them as well, to build in that habit of using AI and leveraging AI.
Rob, that's really, really good. We actually have a later episode. I think it might be next week, where we actually focus a bit on change management and the how that can be so critical to getting good adoption around some of these new technologies. So that was a bit about the day-to-day AI. So yeah, I'm dying to ask, game-changing AI. This sounds like the really exciting stuff. Is that what progress have you made on that?
I'd say it's fairly early stages at the moment. One of the things that we did last year was ran a hackathon event where we got about 40 attendees from across the organization to share some of their large scale business problems that we've got. And they were quite far and wide. We had some really good ones from a medical perspective around some of the support information that we provide, as well as from our marketing teams around our customer service and our web platforms, as well as from retailers. And that event really stimulated some of the thinking big around, what can we do with AI to solve big problems? And it's developed a bit of a pipeline of activities, all of which we are starting to explore at the moment. So it's very early stages. But it's interesting because the winner of that hackathon event is one of the ones that we are quite excited about at the moment. And again, we are early stages, so I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver. But for us, one of the big problems that we have with our retail operation, with the size of it, is around the stock journey. And we offer a service as an organization where you can go onto our website and you can request furniture collections. Someone will send a van driver out to your house to pick up your sofa. Ideally, the sofa gets loaded into the van and gets delivered to a shop, and then we sell it and generate income to support our research into heart and circulatory diseases. Now, that's the golden path. That's what we want to happen every time. But the reality is that sometimes we book in the van collection. The van driver will come to your house, and then when they get to your house, they look at your sofa, and it might have rips, tears, burns, or it doesn't have a fire safety sticker underneath, which we legally have to have in place if we are to sell that sofa. So what we're looking at is there an opportunity for AI to shape some of this process? Could we begin to use image recognition to determine whether we should be picking up a sofa before we send someone to go to the house, which, if the suboptimal path was to happen for us, not only is it wasted time and effort from our side, but actually it's a terrible customer experience as well. You've waited around for us to pick up the sofa, but we haven't been able to. So looking at image recognition, looking at whether we can detect and drive an automated decision path with that customer collection process, whether it be for sofas, tables, chairs, electricals. Some of it is going to be easier to do than others, but for us, this could be a significant improvement in customer experience, but also a big saving in time and effort for the organization as well. So that's probably one example of game changing, but we're in a position at the moment where we're exploring innovative ideas. We've got quite a few in our pipeline, and again, with that intention of starting small and testing value, that's where we're really at before we can scale and move into kind of multi-year projects or programs that will deliver some of the game changing activities.
I like that, Rob. But it's a really practical example there with your furniture shops. And I know, having worked in another organisation that has charity shops, the margins are very tight in those charity shops, and trying to actually successfully make it work and bring in income is very challenging. But the British Heart Foundation on the furniture side of things is sector leading already. So I'm pretty sure you'll crack that one, and it will make a big difference. Really exciting stuff. And we've talked about an awful lot of things here. It's been really good. I just want to squeeze in a question all around your aspirations and your hopes for the future. Can you tell me a little bit about hopes or any fears as well? Anything that you think for your organisation or more broadly?
Yeah, I would say I'm positive about the future of AI, not only at the BHF but in the sector as well. I can see there being some really positive benefits if a learning culture and an exploration culture is built around it as well. I think the important thing for us as an organization is to bring people on the journey with AI. We've taken a very collaborative, a very communicative approach so far, and I hope that that continues as well, because I think AI has a real opportunity in supporting the sector to be more effective, more efficient, and to drive more income to be able to fund into the organization's aims, not only the BHF but other organizations too. From a service perspective, I think there are many untapped areas at the moment around some of the products and the services that the BHF has. And leveraging AI, I think for us over the next few years and seeing where the opportunities could exist will be really interesting route for us to take. Some of the risks, I think, come down to the skills in the organization, and I think building out skills alongside the direction of travel that we're going with AI is going to be a big focus of my team as well as our AI strategy too. I think we're looking at ethical AI and looking at that as a slightly more conversational approach around should we leverage AI in these spaces where compared to responsible AI, it's far more binary for us. It's a yes, no kind of checklist based approach. And I think the maturity in these areas needs to grow alongside the ambition of using AI and building it to shape some of the things that we do as an organization too. I'm naturally positive, I think, around where we could take this, but I think alongside the skills and the awareness and the engagement around AI needs to remain consistent too.
I'm interested in that. The way it was good to the way you split it there, because I think that in the future, I'm expecting there will be some slip ups with AI. But what I'm really hoping for is that the two areas you picked on there, the cost and efficiency side of things, that there'll be much more publicity and interest in the statistics, the metrics around showing how productivity efficiency can be gained. And then the second one is all around the impacting on the aims of organizations. When we get some really good solid use cases of AI changing and delivering there, I think that's when we'll get it'll become really embedded in the sector and we'll really manage to move forward on it. So I think this is a hugely optimistic set of challenges you've laid down to us here, Rob, and I think it's really interesting where the sector might end up. So thank you very much. It's been really great chatting to you. Is there anything else you want to tell us about?
No, I'd say watch this space. I think it's an exciting period. I think these uh, technological milestones come around quite frequently, but I definitely think AI is one of the big ones that not only the BHF should leverage quite strongly, but also the sector as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating few years ahead, and hopefully our strategy positions us quite nicely to be able to work with AI and harness the opportunities of it, rather than seeing it as something as a threat to our existence.
Brilliant, Rob. Well, thank you very much. It's been great having you on today.
Thanks, Stuart. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Bye. And welcome back. And that was really interesting chatting to Rob there. Rob had so many things in there. I almost feel I could develop a lot of that into a masterclass. Mary, I wonder if I can ask you a couple of questions on what Rob talked about, because I want to hear a little bit more, which, as I've reflected on it, one of the great things he talked about was the community and how you'd managed to run some sort of competition, and then you ended up with nearly 100 people in the community. Can you tell me just a little bit more about how that community works?
Sure. I mean, it's based around a team site and it's a real mix of people with different interests. So sometimes people come on there and they just want to ask a question about Copilot, which we're doing our trials with. So they're asking, has anyone used Copilot to, I don't know, update an Excel document or a PowerPoint or something? So there's some of that information sharing. Then there's people coming on, we've got people who've been into AI in their personal lives as well, and they're sharing interesting articles and things that they've seen, and that can bring up a proper conversation. And then we built on that, we were growing that, and then they were encouraged to, it was open to the whole organization, to kind of contribute specific ideas for a kind of ideation competition where we thought, tell us a problem you think that you can solve with AI, and let's see what's out there. Huge enthusiasm for that. A little bit of internal competition, people enjoying coming up with better ideas. So yeah, I think it's amazing that it is actually a live community. I don't know about you, but my team's sidebar is littered with teams that kind of fade away. But this has been running for, I guess, nearly a year now, and it's still live, it's still active, and people are participating. So I think Rob and his team can be really proud of what they've done there.
So one of the reasons I'm really interested in this, because I've wondered is about IT service desks, and are IT service desks going to get inundated with queries about using AI as things progress? And I think what I'm hearing there is that the community here is actually self-answering some of the questions, that some of the things that might end up going to an IT service desk. You're able to create a community to save you having to invest in a larger IT service desk. What you're able to do is get the community to self-answer.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it would be unfair on our service desk colleagues to expect them to be the world's leading experts on Copilot or an AI. We did something similar a few years ago when we were rolling out Office 365 for people, that we set up a community of kind of champions and experts. And that, funnily enough, is still going. You still get the odd message popping up going, oh, how do I do this? So we do have some history in it. And one thing people say about working in BHF is that we're a very kind of friendly and supportive bunch. And I suspect that's the same in a lot of charities that people work in. So there's usually somebody happy to help. And AI is so interesting that they're enthusiastic. And I should add as well, we have some support from colleagues in Microsoft and a third party. So if there's things that we really can't answer internally, then kind of the project team can go and speak to Microsoft and follow up directly that way.
That's a really good, clear approach. And I know from organizations I've worked that the Office 365 rollout equivalent is a really good one, where you get the champions in place, people who are maybe from the business but who understand how it works. Just one quick question before you go. I'm really interested. I've been fascinated talking to Rob, because the British Heart Foundation seem well ahead. And I was reflecting on this and I was thinking, well ahead within the charity sector anyway. But I know that the British Heart Foundation, like many charities, sits in two circles. So you sit within the charity circle, but you're also a science-based organization as well. And I know that the science world and the medical world as well are a lot further ahead in their use of AI. And I was wondering, has that influenced the approach within the organization, do you think?
I think it probably has. That's a really interesting thought. I know that through our medical research funding, which Rob talked about, we're already funding work and experiments using AI in that health space. And we're really lucky in BHF that, the researchers, the scientists, information is shared with us and we get to learn from them. So we've been hearing about the real life application of some of these technologies in healthcare for a while. And I think as a science-based organization, it's been really interesting to learn about that mentality of trialing things, making a hypothesis, testing it out, not being afraid to fail as well. When you talk to some of our medical colleagues, they talk about how many of the research projects do not come out with the expected outcome, but you've learned something really interesting anyway. So I think some of that mentality of learning from doing and not being afraid to fail has helped us as we try to experiment in these areas.
if anyone listening to the podcast wants to comment on this, and you're from a science-based organization, I'd love to understand a little bit more on if we are seeing that science-based organizations are moving ahead more quickly with their AI adoption than perhaps some of the service provision charities or the animal welfare charities. I'd be really interesting to see how the adoption varies across different charities. So please do put things in comments on your podcast platform, on the LinkedIn, or on the newsletter attached as well. I'd be really interested. All right. Well, we're kind of out of time, Mary. It's been really great chatting to both you and Rob today. And we do have another podcast coming out next week. The aim is to keep these weekly, and I'm even going to try it even during the summer months, but we'll see how we get on that when we're all on holiday. Good holiday listening. So thank you very much, Mary. It's been brilliant having you on today. And I look forward to chatting to you more in the future.
Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been great. Thank you, Rob, as well. And yeah, look forward to hearing more of the episodes. Maybe not when I'm on holiday, but maybe when I'm commuting to work.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Mary. Bye.